Well, hello again, everyone. Welcome to the Red and White Authority, episode number 13. I'm Art Regner, along with the Hockey Hall of Fame writer from USA Today, Kevin Allen. And obviously, we're talking Red Wings. And I know there's a lot of panic going on in Red Wing land right now. But, Kevin, if you look at it, and this is pretty astounding, if the Red Wings beat Carolina tomorrow night, and I don't even think it has to be regulation, as long as they get 2 points, let's say, and Pittsburgh, who plays the Ottawa Senators, and they need a win in the worst way too, the Penguins, beat them, Ottawa, in regulation, the Red Wings actually can clinch a playoff spot tomorrow night if those two scenarios happen with 2 games to play. And I'm not so sure a lot of people in Detroit are even aware of that because, as I said right now, it has nothing to do with opening day being today down at Comerica Park. It has everything to do. They're pressing that. They can't press that panic button quick enough and multiple times. But it is pretty astounding. Despite everything they've been through, the chances of them making the playoffs are still pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 things. One, they beat a very good Minnesota team on Saturday. The Wild are 7-2-1 in their last 10, and one of those losses obviously was the 1-pointer that they got was obviously against the Detroit Red Wings, and then Ottawa only got 1 point last night against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and that should have been a 2-point win for an Ottawa team that's played quality hockey for an extended period now. So, yeah, the fact that the Penguins and Senators are playing each other certainly can be a benefit for the Red Wings, as long as, it doesn't end up another one of those 3-point games. And, they still have to beat the Carolina Hurricanes. But, it would be a 4-point swing if Ottawa loses tomorrow night, because I think for the Senators to have a real shot, I think they got to win that game against the Penguins in regulation. So if they don't do that and the Red Wings win, you're absolutely right. They are in the playoffs, and I think most of us feel like they were going to get in. They've put themselves in danger with this late swoon, but the odds are in their favor. And right now the Pittsburgh Penguins and Red Wings are in very similar situations where they're not playing their best hockey late in the season. For the Penguins, it's a little bit scary. Should they lose that game, now they're in danger of missing the playoffs.
Yeah, it's really odd how this thing has kind of worked itself out with everybody, as you said, with the different case scenarios. But let's look at the Red Wings. You said, hey, they won a big game against Minnesota, and they won in a shootout. Jimmy Howard, you could tell that he was as relieved as I think I've ever seen a human being be on the ice when they won that game Saturday night. And then they go back with Mrazek, and is it because he's a young goalie? I know Mike Green's shot that beat him might have been tipped by Drew Miller, but it still hit his glove, and I've noticed the last couple of times, especially with his glove hand, that everything seems to be hitting him kind of like on the thumb part of the glove and then going into the net. Should we be concerned about Peter Mrazek because he's given ample opportunity, has played well, yet we saw it in the Ottawa game, the Boston game, and then maybe, and look, you can say, hey, he only gave up 2 goals. He's played very, very well, but at this point, he's the guy that's got to stand on his head. Are the Red Wings, because we've talked about what are they going to do? Are they going to keep Jimmy? Is Jimmy the guy? Has Mrazek done enough to elicit confidence in the Red Wings, or has there been a chink in his armor, as they like to say, based on some of the goals that he's given up? Because it does seem like when he is given the opportunity, a lot of times he kind of pulls the chute. But is that because he's just young? I mean, I don't know where I'm going with this, I guess, Kevin. You know what I mean? I know I'm all over because he seems to have all the potential.
Yeah.
Yet in the end, you got to grab that brass ring when you're going around the merry-go-round.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think when you're a fan of the Red Wings, this late in the season and they're not in a playoffs, you start to look at players as if they're stocks. They rise and fall every day. And on this program we've done that too, because that's what sports are all about. Most athletes would tell you they always feel like they're only as good as their last game. Well, in this case, I'm sure Mrazek feels that. I mean, both he and Jimmy Howard are feeling tremendous pressure to get this team, into the playoffs, and I think both of them feel as if they're in a competition to be the Red Wings goalie next season. I'm sure they both feel that way, and I'm sure that has played a role in Jimmy Howard's performance level. But I think the Red Wings are a little more grounded about Mrazek, and by that what I mean is this: I think they've seen enough from him this season to establish that what they like about him. What they like about him is he's uber aggressive. He plays aggressive. He challenges the shooters. He gets out above the paint, and more importantly, is he doesn't let bad goals bother him. Like there doesn't seem to be any psychology issues with Mrazek. Like he's given up some bad goals, but he's dug in and he's helped them win late in the game by not giving up another bad goal. And he did only give up 2 goals. Now I know exactly what you're saying about the 2 goals that have tipped off his glove. Where and I've talked about this before. When you're playing well, you're in that right spot where even when that puck tips off your glove, suddenly you're in front of it and it's hitting your body and not going in, and they're going in now. So I don't think there's any alarm bells about Mrazek. I think mostly they feel good about him. He's still a young man. I think they see him as probably it'll be, if I had to guess, Howard and Mrazek next season, and they'll battle it out. Because we've seen, I mean, Mrazek had an opportunity here to seal the deal, as you mentioned. Like, he could have, when Howard was struggling, he could have won that job and been the playoff goalie, in my opinion. I mean, it had reached that point because this happened so late in the season. But, he wasn't able to do that. I mean, he wasn't able to carry the day, and I think, he opened the door back for Howard to get in, and Howard has righted his ship, and, he looked strong Saturday night. I mean, winning the shootout, I mean, that was certainly a statement to the fans. As you said, he was relieved, but everybody who had watched him this season knew he had struggled in it, and the Red Wings needed that win. Like I had said, if they got 1 point out of it, it'd be a plus, and they ended up getting 2. So I think the Red Wings view their goaltending as right where it was kind of a month ago, and that is, I think they believe Mrazek has the potential to be their long-term goalie. I don't think they're ready to throw Jimmy Howard overboard. I think they think about the way he played earlier in the season and think he can still, do the job. So I think what happens in the playoffs certainly will play a role in their thinking.
Well, Tuesday, tomorrow night, they play their last regular season home game of the year. Depending on what happens, I guess you could look at it a number of ways. It's their last home game of the year, period. No playoffs. It could be Mike Babcock's last home game as Red Wings coach behind the bench, depending on how that case scenario plays out. So let's look at this and try to figure out if they play Thursday in Detroit, then Tuesday in Detroit, Thursday in Montreal against the Canadiens, and then Saturday evening against Carolina. You would think that because the playoffs are going to start next week and there'll be like a 3 or 4 day gap at least in games, depending on the TV schedule, that whomever the number 1 goalie is would play these last 3 games. Okay, Kevin, if that's the logic, who's playing these last 3 games?
Well, I think it's Howard. I mean, I think he is. He showed again on Saturday the way he played that. He's still the guy. I think all of us knew that his issues were, that he was having a mental issue with regard to, probably confidence, even though he said it wasn't confidence. But, that's what players, have to say. Oh, my confidence is fine. But, I think he did have a bit of a crisis of confidence for, whatever reason. And I think it's oftentimes even with goal scorers, it's self-fulfilling, and certainly with goalies as well once you start overthinking the game. But, he came up big in a very important game on Saturday, and now I think he's probably is owed the opportunity to be the goalie down the stretch. And, Mrazek didn't win the game against Washington. So, it's still a perform and you play league, and the last time we saw Howard, he performed well. So I think you give him this, start, and as long as he doesn't have disastrous results in his next game, I think he's the guy down to the 3 games and into the postseason.
Well, I agree with you at this point. I think that you have to give it to Jimmy. If you don't give it to Jimmy Howard now, based on the way Mrazek's played, and it hasn't been horribly, but he's let in some fairly soft goals, and I'm not kicking him to the curb, he being Mrazek. But what does it say about Jimmy Howard's future if you don't give him these last 3 games, or at least tomorrow night's game, and see where it goes?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're both in agreement on that. I mean, he's your guy. You've signed him to a contract, and you got to give him this opportunity to show himself. And it would be a different story, in my opinion, if Mrazek had performed well and Jimmy had not pulled himself out of the slump he was in. But he has done that by winning his last outing. And Mrazek, though given the opportunity and his potential is still there, I mean, like, he did play well against the Washington Capitals. Just he didn't win the game, and he gave up a goal that he'd like to have back. So in this case, it's the logical call. It's the right call. And Mike Babcock has fooled us before, but I just can't see him at this point not giving Howard the opportunity. If he didn't give him the opportunity, I think we would be allowed and justified to read between the lines there if suddenly Mrazek was the goalie.
Well, right, and the Red Wings have today off, so I guess we really won't know what they're thinking until tomorrow. Kevin, you talked about Mike Babcock and about things that we talked about this last show, and I wanted to get into it because you talked about the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are having a meltdown similar to the Red Wings. Although I guess if you look at the roster and you examine them, you could say, well, the Penguins, though, are still pretty much built to win right now. They have, but many consider the best player in the world in Sidney Crosby. And things are bad in Pittsburgh when guys are writing they should trade Crosby for Connor McDavid, the #1 pick. I'm not so sure that Buffalo or whomever gets Connor McDavid is going to trade a budding 18-year-old potential Hall of Famer for Sidney Crosby, who's a great player but has a little bit of concussion history, and I'm not sure that would even happen. But I guess my point being is that if Pittsburgh flounders, much like the Red Wings flounder, and one of them or they don't get into the playoffs, is Mike Babcock done, and is he going to Pittsburgh? I can't tell you, and I'm sure you did. I did several radio shows last summer in Pittsburgh about Mike Babcock going there, even though he had a year left on his contract. So, and I know you know Jimmy Rutherford very well, former Red Wing goalie, longtime Carolina GM, now the GM of the Penguins. Can you see that happening? I mean, if that Pittsburgh makes a change, and if they make a change, forget Toronto, forget Philadelphia. He's going to go be with Captain Canada is going home to be with Sidney Crosby.
Yeah, well, I don't think that Jim Rutherford hired Mike Johnston to be a caretaker coach for one season while waiting to see what happened with Mike Babcock. It would really be unfair to Mike Johnston for him to be fired after one season, given the injuries they've had. They've had Pasquale Dupuis and Ali Mott out for the entire season. That would be like losing, Cronwell and Darren Helm or Justin Abdicate or someone of that ilk for the entire season, and then trying to compete. And then Malkin's been in and out of the lineup. They've had numerous injuries. Right now, Letang and Ehrhoff are out of the lineup as well. I don't even know that anyone really knows how good the Penguins are this season, because they have not had the team that Jim Rutherford has put together on the ice. I don't even think they've had it, one game this season. He has really sort of altered this team. He changed the third and fourth lines. He wanted to make the team harder to play against. Johnston and put together a puck possession offense and changed the puck retrieval system, going back to get the puck. It's actually kind of similar to the Red Wings now, where they want to just go get it quickly and get it out of the zone and get it up to the forward. So I think it would be unfair. So that's the long way of saying I just don't see Jim Rutherford firing Johnston if they don't make the playoffs even, and going to Mike Babcock. Now, Mary Lemieux is the owner there, and what I think and what Jim Rutherford thinks isn't as important as what Mario Lemieux thinks. And you know, a lot of writers in Pittsburgh are writing that the window on the Penguins isn't very wide open. That both Malkin and Crosby are getting older by the minute, as we all know, and that they don't have a good farm system, coming. And if they're really sincere about getting another cup quickly, they got to do all that they can. And does that mean bringing a guy like Mike Babcock? So I don't think it's going to happen. I know Sidney Crosby enjoyed his experience of playing for Mike Babcock, but I just think that they're going to give Johnston the opportunity to see what he can do with this team if it's healthy, even if that's next season.
Well, but there is, and I'm going to go back a long time. I'm dating myself. I know Kevin will remember this, but first of all, Crosby likes him, as you say. You don't know what Lemieux's thinking, but could this be a simple case of Rutherford or Lemieux saying, look, this is, although he wouldn't use this analogy, but I am for our Detroit audience, this is Les Moss, Sparky Anderson all over again.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, Les is a great guy. We love him, and he deserves better. But then again, we have Sparky Anderson, or in this case, we have Mike Babcock, a proven winner, a guy whom we know our captain responds to. So, bam, we had to make this change.
Yeah, well, and I think that's why there's some logic to people thinking this is possible, because just for that reason. I mean, it is a unique situation that a guy of Mike Babcock's ability, reputation, and resume is available. Coaches get fired all the time, but this is a guy that's still viewed as being at the top of his game, and it's not as if he's being shuffled aside because the team hasn't performed for him. This team, is up flirting with 100 points again, despite the fact that down the stretch here they haven't played well. And Mike Babcock clearly is a quality coach. So I see that point. I don't think I've sort of I've known Mario Lemieux for a very long time, and I don't see him as a meddlesome coach. I know he wants to win. And he doesn't, and he's not the most patient guy in the world, but he generally allows the GMs to do what he pays them to do. So that's why I think there's probably a greater chance that Babcock would end up in a place like Philadelphia, who is probably going to fire their coach, or if Anaheim stumbles and Bruce Boudreau gets let go, I think that would be a possibility as well. And I think there's always a surprising team that you don't count on. That could be available, and who knows what opportunities will be there. And then there's the other possibility, which is you and I have talked about, is we think he's probably going to stay. But let's see what happens this week with the team. I mean, if the Red Wings didn't make the playoffs for some reason, even though we think we would, I think we'll be talking about a different game next week.
Well, what's interesting about that is that when they came back from that 6-game road trip, which we're all saying this is it, this is the litmus test for the Red Wings, and they could have played better. They lose it. The only game they lost was to the Kings, I believe, 1-0, and the Monster played in that game and played very, very well, and seemed like, all right, Detroit's on a roll. Since that time. And I know that they've had some injuries to deal with, and the Mule is obviously, I would assume, out for the year. I can't see him, coming back. Eric Cole, that injury did not look good. He's had a history with neck issues and upper body injuries, and now Justin Abdicator, which social media was saying on Saturday night, he broke his hand and he's out 6 to 8 weeks. Although the Red Wings have not said anything officially about that, but it didn't look too good when the puck hit him square in the hand. On that glove, there isn't a whole lot of padding. It looked like where it hit him. It wasn't on the, it was inside, it looked like. Anyway, with all that said, that the luster on Mike Babcock, which couldn't have been higher when they came back from that 6-game road trip, with fans virtually demanding that the Red Wings sign him right now. Guys, poor Ken Holland doing interviews on TV and, not gotcha questions, but people saying, why haven't you signed this guy? What's taking so long? And Holland going, well, Kenny trying to explain himself. But now it seems to change and says, look, if this team doesn't make the playoffs, or even if they make the playoffs and they kind of back their way in, this is a reflection of Mike Babcock. He's been here 10 years. It's time for him to go. Sayonara, Mike, especially when it looks like whom you could give Jeff Blashill, you and me as his 1 and 2 defenseman, whether to his top defensive pairing, and he could win with us. I mean, he's working magic in Grand Rapids, and if they make a long playoff run, and if they win the Calder Cup again, which would be, 2 championships in 3 years, how can you not deny him? I mean, he's if Babcock is the hottest coaching prospect, and he is in the NHL right now, Jeff Blashill is ascending up that ladder too.
Yeah, no, he is exactly, and again, Tony Granato is a guy that's very popular with the players, and he has to be considered as a factor as well. And you're absolutely right about all that. I mean, always in the local market, it's completely different. Like nothing has tarnished Mike Babcock's reputation around the NHL. Right. I mean, he's the hottest coaching property that I can remember, in a while. I think he exceeds Barry Trotz last season because Babcock has won. Barry Trotz is viewed as a quality coach, and when Lindy Ruff was free in Buffalo, everybody was interested in him as well. He had a lot of options, but that was simply based on reputation and watching what he does with teams. Babcock has that same reputation, but he's won 2 gold medals with Canada, and he's won a Stanley Cup and a World Championship, and he has this sort of aura about him. So around the NHL, it doesn't matter what the Red Wings do this season. If the Red Wings don't get in, the people who look at Babcock in terms of potentially hire him are going to say, well, he didn't have a team there. That Red Wing team isn't any good. Like, if Mike Babcock can't get him in the playoffs, the Red Wings are going to be bad for a long time. But I agree with you. Locally, everybody will see it, differently, because I think people view this team as having a lot of potential. It still has Zetterberg and Datsuk, and it has Tatar and Nyquist and that group coming up. Although, the bottom line of all this collapse at the end, and they have had some injuries, and there's been some issues, and the defense hasn't played well, but if the goaltending had been sound, I think we'd have seen a completely different team. I think that just sort of disrupted everything with the Red Wings, including their defensive play. I mean, their defensive play has been shoddy, and it was a chicken and an egg. But I think once the goaltending wasn't strong, I think this Red Wing team started to fight it a little bit, and I think they started to try to play differently and try to compensate, and I think they played worried hockey. And now, if their goaltending is going to be strong again, I think they'll be a better team.
Well, and the feedback I've been getting is you guys always talk about Babcock right at the end. You give us like a little nugget, and then next show we think, well, okay, they're going to pick up where they left off, and then 5 minutes left to go on the show, you're back with the Babcock. So let's look at it this way. I'm Mike Babcock, okay, and I'm thinking to myself, first of all, I've never really been enamored with Jimmy Howard as a goalie anyway. I think that's pretty apparent. A lot of people that cover it know that Babcock has had some issues, but most coaches have issues with their goaltenders, unless they themselves are like Patrick Waugh. He probably has no issue with his goaltender because he kind of understands the position. So, okay, I understand that. But Babcock could say, look, I've been a miracle worker here for 2 seasons. I don't think I can, there's no more blood to get out of this Red Wing stone here. I'm hitting the door. Or from the Red Wing perspective is, look, he's been here 10 years. When things started to go bad, he could not change the situation. His message got stale. Henrik Zetterberg has fallen off the map. Had 1 goal or something in 24 games. Not that he's still trying and playing well, but they just don't seem to be responding to him anymore, which is human nature after somebody has been breathing down your neck for 10 years. I mean, so there's a couple of dynamics maybe going on here that, except for, even though you are certainly a national-based writer, but you live here in and we're so happy about that, here in the greater metropolitan Detroit area. But with that said, I mean, that's kind of plausible either way you look at it. I mean, they could sit there at the end of the year and say, look, Babs could say, look, Kenny, I know you've done whatever you can do. I'm thinking, my run here is done. Although, again, and I agree with you what you said about goaltending. I think that the lack of goaltending prowess the last 5-6 weeks of the season here has really hampered Detroit. There's no question about that. It affects the whole team. It obviously affects the confidence level. But I could also see something that I didn't think was going to happen. You know, I mean, I've gone from at the beginning of the year he's not coming back to then the majority of the year saying he is coming back, and now I'm kind of wondering, does he want to come back, and do the Red Wings want him back? And I don't think, because Babcock is so popular, that the Red Wings are going to initiate the move. You know, it's pretty much still all up to Babcock. But the feelings might be more together than we think.
Yeah. Well, I also think there's always a factor involved in this, and it's not just in hockey, but in life and in business, where the season-ending meeting or the meeting called to get down to brass tacks. Like sometimes, you know, all the issues that have sort of crept in all come to a head. And, you know, look, we've talked about this before. You know, Mike Babcock is not an easy coach to play for. You know, he's confrontational. He's direct. You know, his style wears on players after a while. Because in order to, he feels to get the most out of his players, you know, he's got to be on them all the time. It's completely different, and I've said this before, than Scotty Bowman. Scotty Bowman rarely talked to players. Right. So even though he made it clear how he felt in terms of, you know, by manipulating their playing time or putting them in the press box or, you know, sending messages through their assistant coaches, it isn't as tiresome and as trying as Mike's style. You know, Babcock is you know, just more direct, and I think it does wear on it. And you know, I think you know, he hasn't always been on the exact same page with Ken Holland in terms of personnel, just as you've alluded to. You know, Ken Holland has signed some players, and Mike hasn't always you know, agreed in you know, who's on his roster. So my point is, when you get to the end of the season, if this team doesn't get in the playoffs and they get in a room and they start talking about all these things and all this sort of comes out, you know, sometimes you go into that meeting and then suddenly you walk out and it's all over and you're not quite sure what happened. Is that possible here? Maybe. You know, I mean, if Mike and Ken Holland are dealing with a team that didn't make the playoffs and are in this and they start talking about this, does at some point say, well, maybe it's just time for us to just part ways. And the other guy says, maybe it is. And, you know, they walk out. So, I mean, I think that's a plausible scenario because, and I mentioned last time, if Barry Trotz and David Poile, close friends,
right,
get to that point, and that's what happened last year. You know, David Poile thought Barry Trotz was still a great coach. He just said, look, I think it's just time we just move in a different direction. We have a different, well, then I think that's plausible here. I really do. But if you're Mike Babcock, and this is the bottom line, you know, everybody talks about challenges. I don't think Mike Babcock's about challenges. I think he's about winning. And ultimately, you know, where's his best chance to win? Is it going to be in Philadelphia? Is it going to be in Anaheim? It's certainly not in Toronto, not right away. No. It might be right here in Detroit, and that's, you know, the bottom line. So, you know, I think it's hard to speculate, and this is tough on fans. It's hard to speculate what Mike Babcock is going to do because I think Mike Babcock doesn't know what he's going to do. And I don't think this is one of those cases where he's known all along what he's going to do. I don't think he does. I think he is sincere when he says he's going to wait and see what happens at the end here.
Well, I think, you know, obviously we touched upon the passing of his father last program. Yeah. With what has gone on in his personal life, you know, and he keeps saying we're going to be empty nesters now, meaning all his, you know, his 3 children are out of the house, and he has, and then the way this season is unfolded, where depending on how these last 3 games play out, you know, you could almost look at it as, you know, I like to say this just to rile up the Leaf fans that listen to this show, and I know there's many of you out there, that, you know, their collapse could be Maple Leaf-like, and, you know, if that happens, you know, he just might think, honey, we can't pack up the house soon enough here in Northville and get the hell out of town. I mean, but it's just odd because, and I think you've hit it. You hit it right on the head. We have not. I can't remember a time in my life, and even Joe Madden last year with Tampa. Now he's the Cubs manager, and the way they performed him. I know you were just in Chicago, but he probably thinks Tampa wasn't that bad a place. Wrigley Field, are they blowing the place up? What's going on here? But with all that said, I can't remember, except I guess maybe Jim Harbaugh. I mean, a coach that is this top of mind by the entire fan base. I mean, everybody who's a hockey fan or a fan of the National Hockey League, regardless of teams, knows that Mike Babcock is the #1 free agent this coming summer, and that's pretty weird.
Yeah, well, it is, and I mean, he knows, and you've brought it up before. He can hit a home run not only for himself but for all coaches, because if he gets $5 million, then Joe Quenneville next time in his negotiation, Ken Hitchcock, Lindy Ruff, everybody gets pulled up, with the guy on top. There's no coaches union, but they sort of stick together in terms of they talk to each other about salaries and have a handle on what's going on. Mike Babcock knew that Joel Quenneville was the highest paid coach. I'm pretty sure, and I'm sure Joel Quenneville's happy to tell him what he's earning, because if he gets a bump, then Quenneville will get a bump as well. So it's a very, very unique situation. And the Madden thing is interesting, going to the Cubs, Joe Madden, because it sort of is a reminder too, again, about the unique situation. In Madden's case, he did a lot with not very much there. He was always knows that his players were going to be out the door as soon as possible. It's not a good place to play. They have budgetary issues, they have fan issues, all sorts of issues. So, everybody knew that if he got this great opportunity, like going to the Cubs, and where everybody loves the team and everything else, he was going to go here. There are not many situations as good as the Detroit situation in terms of fan support, ownership support, quality general manager, quality history of putting together good teams. Like, if you go to some of those other places that we've mentioned, they don't have the same history nor the same level of some do. I mean, obviously Ed Schneider has been around as an owner in Philadelphia, but the point is, everything you want when you're a coach, it's already here. So, are you going to just go for the money? Mike Babcock doesn't strike me as a guy that just goes for the money. So that's why I think it's not going to be easy for him just to say, well, I want to go elsewhere. I think it was easy for Madden to leave and go to the Cubs. I don't think it would be easy for Babcock to just say, well, I'm going to go elsewhere.
Yeah, but with that said, he's not going to pull an Al Kaline and turn down money, though. He's not going to take a $100,000 contract or whatever and say, no, I won't sign that. But no, you're right. I mean, Mike Babcock is extremely grounded and understands the position that he's in, not only on a personal level, but as you said, on a professional level, and how his contract will affect the coaching business. And, and I'm talking just not at the National Hockey League level either. I mean, he's going to raise the bar for everybody. He's going to get just a slight bump, I mean, I'm not saying that Jeff Blashill is going to demand more money from the Red Wings with 2 years left on his deal, but he might say, hey, look, I think I'm ready to be a coach right now, and, Babs is going nowhere. Can we sort of work something out? Which would be interesting to see if Kenny would do that or not. Let's move on now to the hopefully that's enough Babcock talk for now. We'll keep speculating about that as the season winds down here. But Eric Cole's out. Johan Franson's been out. Justin Abdicator's out. We've talked about the thing that our biggest fear is for the Red Wings during this playoff run isn't that they're a tough team. Okay, they're not gonna. I know it was Easter yesterday. They're not turning the cheek, for anybody. I mean, they're going to stand up for themselves and all that kind of stuff. It isn't, thank you, sir, may I have another, anything like that. Yet, when you look at their size and their gritty guys, and, Franson probably shouldn't play that way, but he does anyway because it really gets him off his game when he wants to be physical. In a long playoff run, this team could wear down quickly if these guys don't come back. At least Cole and I guess there's speculation that Cole may be back. I'm sorry, Kevin, that injury looked pretty bad for a guy, as I said, that has history of he broke his neck. I mean, I never thought he was going to play hockey again. I'll be honest with you. And he's come back and been remarkable. And more power to him. But this situation with their forward core, because of the guys who are hurt and the size of the guys that are hurt, that does not bode well whether the Red Wings make the playoffs or not.
No, and I just said this on another radio show. Right now, if you had to have me list my two teams that look like the easiest outs in the first round, it's the Penguins and the Red Wings. Simply based on the fact that they're not playing well down the stretch, they're all beat up. They have the ability, both teams do, to prove me wrong. I mean, the Penguins have Crosby and Malkin. My gosh, why couldn't they make a run? But they haven't played well down the stretch, and the Red Wings haven't played well down the stretch, and the Red Wings are capable of proving me wrong as well. But that's what you see. I mean, if you start analyzing the teams around the NHL, and a lot of these teams are playing well. Like the Minnesota Wild are, as I mentioned before, have 7-2-1 in their last 10. They've been among the best teams in the league. The Ottawa Senators have, since February 10th, have performed like one of the top teams. The Boston Bruins have had to play well to get in this position to get in. The Washington Capitals have already gotten in. I mean, they're very comfortable playing one-goal games, which they've never been comfortable playing. Yeah, I mean, Barry Trotz has transformed that team. The Rangers have been, in my opinion, the best team in the league. The Tampa Bay Lightning, I've talked about how I think they're a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. The Montreal Canadiens have Carey Price and everything. The Red Wings in this group, they don't fit right now. Because this group of these teams I'm talking about, they're all playing at a high level, and they've got a lot of things going for them. And all we've been talking about for 2 weeks is the struggles the Red Wings have, and they're getting worse. As you mentioned, Justin Abdicator, the Red Wings are not deep in physical, strong players, and he's one of their guys. And in my opinion, he's one of their on-ice leaders. He kind of can set a tone a little bit. He's first in line when there's trouble. So, a lot of guys are going to have to step up, even if they get in the playoffs, if they want to make any kind of run, because right now they're not set up. Now, I'm sure if Ken Holland was on this call with us, he'd point out, and rightfully so, that we have seen times when the team has not been performing well, and they've made really strong runs in the playoffs. They've done that. So it doesn't say just because you're not playing well that you can't make a run, but they're going to have to turn it on a dime, because the brand of hockey they're playing now will not serve them in terms of getting them to an extended run in the postseason.
I know we've touched upon this before, briefly last show, and what's going on with Henrik Zetterberg? 1 goal in 24 games. He's out there. He still possesses the puck pretty well. He's had some opportunities, certainly. But again, and Kevin, I'm asking maybe the impossible question, because as great a captain as he is, and he is a great captain, I think as far as leadership, two-way game, he's the guy that you want to be wearing the C for the Detroit Red Wings at this point. But is it father time? Is it the back? I mean, he doesn't look like it looks like he's laboring out there, but it doesn't look like it's a back issue, if that makes sense. Yeah. That he's just having a tough go of it right now. And, as opposed to, and we've touched upon him, Datsuk looks like he has the fountain of youth in his bathtub or something. And, Zetterberg looks like, I guess, and I have a tendency, as you very well know, to overreact. I'm really concerned about Henrik Zetterberg at this point.
Yeah, well, I think it's all of the above. I mean, I think Father Time has, whittled away at him a little bit. I think he's got a lot of miles on him. He's a high mileage vehicle right now, and they're hard miles. A lot of city driving for Hank.
Right. A lot of stop and go.
Yeah, exactly. And, he plays a gritty game. He goes to the traffic areas. He pays a price to protect that puck like he does. He's sort of like, to me, like the you see guys and they've had Mercedes and they're an older model Mercedes. It still look pretty good, but they break down a little bit more and they repair. But guys don't want to give up. I wouldn't want to give up my Zetterberg if I was a coach, because he still does too many things that are important in terms of his leadership, his puck possession. He's a strong defensive player still. He's a smart player. He's good in the room. But you have to accept the fact that as players get older, they're not going to produce. I think the one goal in that extended period, to me, that's not really representative of how he's playing. I think he's playing at a little higher level than that. But there's still room for him on there. But I think the days of looking at him as one of your premium scorers on the team are. He's probably not going to be there. It's going to be Tatar and Nyquist and that group now taking over, and you got to look at him more as being an important player. But some of the other guys are going to have to pick up the slack, because I don't think that he has the ability to be a premium scorer again. I think he can be a good scorer. I just don't think he can be your leading scorer.
Yeah, I think again, he'll be a good setup man, as he always has been. I mean, he. I don't think the assists have really fallen off. The goal scoring has a little bit, which leads me to another question. And I know we're not wrapping up the Red Wings season here, but Johan Franzen showed up, 3 weeks ago, brought his son, and everyone thinks, well, okay, maybe the mule is coming back. At this point, although it would be nice because you never know what you're going to get from him, but if you get anything from Franzen, it's usually spectacular, at least for a short period of time. Do the Red Wings make some sort of decision on him? And I'm not sure, because people ask me, well, contractually, could they buy him out? And I don't think next season's the season where the salary cap is the same. It's the same hit. But I still think he's like a $4.9 million next year, maybe not, but then it starts to decrease. In the last 2 years of his contract, on paid, he's getting paid only $1 million, which is a lot of money. But the cap hit is still 4.9 or whatever it is. So I guess what I'm asking you is do you think that and I guess he could retire if the concussion problems. I don't know how that works against the cap if it's a medical reason why he has to retire. But where do you see Franzen in all of this as far as the Red Wings go? Because they seem like they're hot to get maybe some young, some of the younger forwards really acclimated into it. And if they really do want to not blow it up, but make some significant changes, they might have to part with a couple of their young forwards too, and get maybe veteran forwards. I mean, there's so many ways they could go. Where does Franzen fit into all of this?
Well, I think right now he's gone until he proves he's not. I mean, I don't think that he's in their plans right now because of his concussion history, and I think I think they've sort of written him off, and it doesn't hurt their salary cap position because he's on the long-term injured reserve, and you still have to pay a guy if he gets hurt. So I think he's sort of in the Mark Savard position. The Bruins have been carrying Mark Savard for 3 or 4 years. He's just on their long-term IR. He had a concussion issue and he's never come back. And I think that's how the Red Wings probably view Franzen. Now, I think it hasn't been written in stone that he's not coming back, but I think you just have to sort of operate like that. I mean, the one thing about pro sports that's kind of the tough part about it is that when guys get hurt, they're like dead to the team. Like they don't come around, you don't see them.
Right.
They just sort of go away. And I think in Franzen's case, because it is a concussion, because he's had those in the past. Because as I recall, I think he said when he came back, when he brought his kid in, he said, he's had some good days, but he's had some bad days. So, that didn't sound to me like a guy who's ready to come back. You've got to, be symptom free, and it didn't sound like he was. I wasn't there when he came back in the dressing room, but that's what I remember reading. So, if that's the case, I think the Red Wings are just assuming he's not coming back until he walks in that door and says, hey, I have felt great for a month now, and I think I'm fine. And, that's possible. I mean, we all have seen the history of Sidney Crosby, where he barely played over 2 years, and then suddenly he got better, and now he's back contending for another scoring title, even though the numbers aren't to where they've been in the past, but he's still at a high level. So I think they've made their peace with Franzen, and that's the way they got to view it.
Well, I mean, obviously, it's a sad situation because you hate to see anybody be hurt, and especially concussions, and we know how serious a problem that is. So, we certainly wish him the best. I mean, he's an odd fellow to say the least, and to cover him is truly a joy from my perspective because you never really know what he's going to say, except he loves watermelon. I'll just tell you that he is obsessed with watermelon. But but aside from that, and when he's on, there's not many better. I mean, he has an accurate shot. He gets it off quickly. It has a lot of velocity on it. So he is a productive player. As much as he frustrates Red Wing fans, and and we can just stand in the line. I think everybody can say that. It's just too bad that it's sort of. It's like his career is kind of petering out here in Detroit, and it's too bad for a player who, at one time in the playoffs was breaking Gordie Howe's records, to go out like this. So we certainly wish him the best. Let's look at it. The Red Wings haven't said much about Justin Abdicator. Social media blew up Saturday night that he broke his hand. I'm just saying I have no idea if that's the case or not. The Red Wings are off today, so we probably will not know. Maybe later today they'll announce something, but probably tomorrow at the morning skate we'll find out. If Abdicator's gone, and it's essential then that Eric Cole comes back, but we keep hearing day to day for him. And I know I've already said this is not a good situation, but at this point, I think that Tatar and Nyquist and Riley Sheehan. And I know Yurko is down now, and I think Pulkkinen, who's still learning the ropes. I think these kids are giving you everything that they have. I'm not discouraged by their play, but at this point, if Abdicator doesn't come back, if Cole is day to day for gosh knows how long, and we just touched on Franzen, are Daniel Cleary and Stephen Weiss, who has been in some positions here, he's gotten a point or two. Are these guys capable of filling the void?
Well, they're going to have to because there's just aren't any other options, and you can't expect Cleary to be the player that he was, when he was at his best with the Red Wings. I mean, he's simply not that guy anymore. His father time has caught up with him. But Stephen Weiss, I think, still has potential. When he wasn't healthy when he came here, and then I think he's had, I think he felt like he didn't sort of fit in, and he's been trying to find his way, and then he's been in and out of I don't want to say the doghouse, but Mike Babcock, hasn't appreciated his what he brings, and so he's been in and out of the lineup, and I think he has some potential to be one of those guys that, given the opportunity, that in the playoffs he could step up and suddenly be a scorer for him. It was a scorer his entire career in Florida, and then when he got to Detroit, he just hasn't been able to duplicate that.
No, he hasn't, and and I remember him as a Plymouth Whaler, the now defunct Plymouth Whalers. The Flint Firebirds, though, weird logo, but I guess it works for me. But you've seen it, right?
Yeah.
It's hey, little kids are gonna love it, right, Kevin? And isn't that what it's all about these days?
Yeah, the logos are supposed to be. So
right, I'm sure for Easter you brought all your grandchildren Firebirds paraphernalia because they're fascinated with big birds and hockey sticks, but blowing fire. Thank God the sticks aren't wood anymore, so they won't burn up. But with all that said, we've got a Red Wing team here that is, I still think they're going to make the playoffs. Maybe I'm Candide. I'm the eternal optimist here. I'm trying to think of there's got to be something. That they're somehow still going to do it. Yet, and they luck out. I mean, Carolina plays tonight. They play Buffalo, and then they play Detroit. And if you look at it, it always seems that the Red Wings, I don't know how many, they must lead the league in this, getting teams on the second night of back-to-backs. I mean, it seems like every time I turn around, the team that they're playing at the Joe especially is a team that had already played the night before. I mean, if they cannot beat the Carolina Hurricanes, and granted, Cam Ward, we've said that they've been playing well. Actually, the second half of the season when they started to get a little healthy, Carolina has not been a bad team. Yet, look, if they don't beat Carolina tomorrow in a 2-point regulation win, maybe they don't deserve to be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, this could not be in a this is like set up on a platter for them, regardless if they have to go to Montreal Thursday and then close out against Carolina, who God only knows where their minds are going to be. They're probably all looking towards Hilton Head by that time on Saturday night, the Hurricanes. I mean, let's face it. Tomorrow, I'm not even going to say a must-win. This is the season here. You win this game, you're in the playoffs. You don't win this game, maybe you don't deserve to be in the playoffs.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, you look back at when they had 5 games to go. I remember we talked about. I said they had to get 5 points to get in, and they got 2 against Minnesota. And by saying they need 5 points, also every point Ottawa doesn't get, plays into that. And they didn't get 2 points last night; they only got 1. So they really only need 1 more win, as far as I see it. And they're going to get it in these final 3 games. Carolina has nothing to play for. These games are important to them. The Red Wings, they've got to win, and I think you're right on the money. If you can't beat Carolina in one of these 2 games, and really you should win both of them, even if you just say you're going to lose to Montreal, then you really don't deserve to get in. So, I think they're in. I felt all along they were going to get in. It was possible. There's a danger level here, but they're going to get in. I mean, they're a playoff team. They've performed like a playoff team. They've got enough points to be in this position. Even with the swoon they've had, they flirted with 100 points. I mean, they've been a disaster for a little while now, and yet they had a potential even down the stretch to get 100 points.
And when we look at it, I think goaltending is a big issue. Why of this recent swoon? I love that word, Kevin. But it's been breakdowns. The old expression is you win as a team, you lose as a team, and quite frankly, if the Red Wings don't get into the playoffs, it has been a collective. It has been a team breakdown. Almost every aspect of their game. We haven't even talked about the penalty kill, which has been absolutely horrible as of late. But truly, if they don't get it, and when they strip off the jersey against Carolina Saturday night out, and although there's there's 4 different dressing rooms that the visitors have, and the whole team isn't together in Carolina, if I remember correctly. I think there's actually 2 or something. It's a weird configuration, as Kevin very well knows. But they have nobody but to blame but themselves. When they look in the mirror, it isn't like they can't pass the buck to one aspect of the game. If they don't get in, it's a collective.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And even the offense. Bears some responsibility as well. I mean, I think the defensive play, as you mentioned, the penalty killing has not been good down the stretch. And of course, we've talked to death about the goaltending, but even their goals. I mean, they've got a bunch of goals, even while they've struggled. But when they've needed them, they couldn't get the goal against the Capitals that they really needed yesterday. And I thought that was big. Like, they had an opportunity to come back in that game, and they just couldn't get the goal that they needed. And I think that's, to me, I've seen a little too much of that too, where trying to find that big goal. I still think they struggle to do that, and I think that's just an indication of a team that, again, it's still trying to find itself. Like, even though Nyquist and Tatar and Sheahan and that group has established that they're central figures in this, I don't know that they've proven yet that they they can rise up and win those games. I mean, they made a great run last year, but that was almost on adrenaline and momentum. Now they've got to show they can prove they can do that on a regular basis. And they've had some moments this year when they haven't been able to get that goal when they really need it.
No, I agree. Well, on that note, Kevin, I know that you have other obligations. I'm doing radio today, so I have to. We're kind of short. People are saying, kind of short. You're almost at an hour, but for Kevin and I, we're just getting started. So So we'll have to leave it there. Obviously we'll see. I've got my Hockey Hall of Fame shirt on. Wishing good things to Henrik Zetterberg, because he's going to be in the Hall of Fame someday. Datsuk as well. I've got Sherlock Holmes up here today, just because the mystery of the Red Wings. Maybe he can help us solve it, and they can get their acts together. But with all that said, Kevin, I would imagine Wednesday we'll do this again.
Yes.
We'll look at the Carolina game, and who knows? Maybe we're talking about a Red Wing team that is bound for the playoffs for the 24th consecutive season. So we'll see. All right, for Kevin Allen, I'm Art Regner. This is the Red and White Authority, episode number 13. Until Wednesday, have a safe and pleasant one. Enjoy the baseball today if you're going to opening day. And if you're going to opening day, you're probably not watching this. But we will, but you can after the game. David Price, wasn't he great? Unbelievable. Sign that guy. Him and Babcock. Somehow get it done. But anyway, that'll do it. I'm acting a little crazy here. On behalf of Kevin Allen, I'm Art Regner. We'll see you. Take care. Bye-bye.